I wish everybody did user testing and understood that it's not scary. And the value that you get from it is not just creating a better user experience, you're co creating with the end user. I would say building trust is getting them part of the co creation, then following up with them. They can leverage this advocacy pool of customers or end users to give constant feedback. That's also why I'm really excited about AI and I embrace it because I think you can do these like micro learnings that build trust with end users and apply it to your product design.
Alec, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Happy Friday. And why don't you just kick us off, give us a little bit of background about who Alec Harrison is and what you're up to in this world.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I am 36. I've been doing UX UI design for the past 12 plus years. I studied graphic design, visual arts, anthropology, sociology. I was always a creative at heart. I love music as well. Chose the creative path. When I graduated college, I soon came out and I had two paths. I could go work at the studio in Switzerland, and I'm a big ski bum, had goldies, sounded great. Or I could join this startup that was out of Babson College that did e-commerce, custom made kind of clothing. I had no idea what an app was. I had no idea what UX UI was. So I chose that path. And that led me to live in Shanghai, China for a couple of years, learning how user-centric design could actually impact a business, good or bad. So I got to see what did my design do to the business and to the revenue. And right then it kind of clicked for me that I really liked what this thing was. I didn't really know what entrepreneurship was. I didn't really understand the business side of things. I thought I was just going to make beautiful posters in fashion in New York kind of thing. So I kind of got that bug of what is this thing? I want to do more of that. So I've been freelancing since a sophomore of college. My director there said, don't do it. And I was like, well, I don't want to be a bartender. I would rather kind of make logos and do stuff for people. So I read books. I was very self resourced there. And I fucked up. I basically wrote some proposals that were good, some proposals that weren't good. I got paid, didn't get paid. So I've gone through a lot of ebb and flows through the service industry. And it always comes back to kind of my brand ethos, like do good work for good people, try not to work with the assholes. So that's where my personal brand, No Monkey Business, came in. So I worked at an agency, I've done startups, I've been creative director at multiple kind of startups and let's say middle-sized companies. And what it came down to is I still love working for myself, even though there's risks. I like to be in charge of that risk and the flexibility that comes with it. Part of that has been great is I've been able to build an awesome network of relationships around that. So if I needed help or if I wanted to help someone, I think that's the magic of kind of my career path.
I love it. I love it. And there's so much to unpack there, especially with going back to the original decision and then starting to consult. First of all, any regrets with not going the ski bum path?
Always, every day. So I do love skiing, and I was like, well, I guess print shop could have been a pretty easy life. You're basically like the Guggenheim letterpress there. But no, I think the experiences I've had just going through all this has been incredible. I feel like I've lived 12 lives.
There's something about service businesses, I think, in particular, where there is that, for better for worse, it feels like you've lived 12 lives for every one that everyone else, or 12 years for every one that everyone else experiences, 12 lives for every one life. Is that, I personally have done the startup path, I've done the service path, I've kind of experienced both sides. I also feel like there's a certain amount of sadism or maybe masochism, right? Of there's a lot more pain that can also come with service-based industries and working for others and having to meet clients where they are and educate, and sometimes there's pulling teeth and sometimes it's wonderful and sometimes it's painful. Is that something that you identified and you're like me, a glutton for punishment? You said I love this, good and bad, or was it something that you kind of naturally discovered and just kept leaning more into versus an intentional decision?
That's a great question. So I always tell everybody that this is not for everybody. So it's kind of like, you think in your career path, you need to be a manager. Not everyone is meant to be a manager or should be a manager. I think the same goes for the service industry. So I've always loved people. I'm very extroverted. I liked mediating in elementary school. Like, I think I probably would have been a therapist if I didn't pick this career path. So I have the personality trait that I'll be up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., writing an email, thinking the worst could possibly happen. I always have plan B ready to go. And I'll always under promise and over deliver. And that's just who I am by nature. I'm a little like neurotic sometimes too. Like, are they happy? And I think what I liked about the service kind of industry is you get feedback right away. And that's the kind of beauty of it. Whether it's really good or really bad, you learn to kind of work with different types of people. And you can also kind of decide who do I kind of match with and who don't I match with. So, yeah, I mean, there's always the grind. There's those nights that you wake up at 2 a.m. and you're in deep sweat and you're like, cash flow, like, what am I going to do? I found out what I was made of when I was in China and I was dating this girl and she was a student. She wasn't paying for rent. The startup I was with had to let me go. And I was like, holy shit, I don't have money to pay to go fly back to US right now. What am I going to do to pay rent and how am I going to get back? So I hustled on odesk.com, which was it's Upwork today. And I remember just sending like 100 different messages out. I finally got a click on a CrossFit magazine out of Canada. And I'm pretty sure I designed a full magazine within like 3 days and 3 nights. And I just hustled and I was lucrative. After that, obviously, everything picked up in freelance, but it really shows you what you're made of or not made of. And I definitely have the grit. I don't know if that's from like sports growing up or my parents growing up, but I definitely have the work ethic that it took to just never give up and be really confident to say, I have no other choice. I've got to eat or my family has to eat and I'm going for it. And as I get older, though, I do learn to like breathe, relax. The kids thing, I've got two kids, one's 3, one's 1. And that kind of puts in perspective that there are fires, but they're manageable. There might not be as big as you think they are.
How much of those fires change based on your perspective has shifted as you've gotten more experience and gone through the years, and now you have kids and a family, and so there are other things that are more important, versus how much of it is that you've actually just gotten more skills in terms of being able to, oh, I've addressed that type of problem and that type of problem and that type of problem, and I've seen this situation, I've seen this client situation. And so you just have the knowledge of saying, this thing that maybe would have been new if I experienced it for the first time 9 years ago, I'm experiencing it today. And oh, you know what? This kind of looks like that same problem, so I'm not going to worry as much about it. So how much of it is like your perspective has shifted because you have different priorities, or yeah, maybe different priorities, versus you just have a lot of knowledge, and so things are less scary because you're not kind of blindsided by an unknown, who knows what's going to happen type situation.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say it's kind of 50-50. So the experience I gain is okay, I've been in this situation before. What did I learn from that situation? What not to do, what to do. So that helps me be a little more proactive. Like, how do I make sure this is the right client to work with or not? Are they the right fit? Can we provide service for them? And sometimes that's just a personality connection. So, are they going to align well with my team or not? And then sometimes like family. So I could be working 60, 80 hours right now, and I'm sure we could like double X our revenue. But I've made an ethical decision to find a great business partner who also is a family man. He's a dad. And we shut the light off at 5 p.m. on a Friday. We take vacations. We invest in PTO and things like that. And I think that's just where I am in my life. If my wife has 2 more kids, call me then. It might be a different story. But I think as in my 20s, I was on the grind. I was freelancing. I was out networking every night. Now I probably have 2 drinks and I'm ready for bed at 8 o'clock. So it definitely changes.
Do you think people who maybe want to go on the same path of freelancing? I mean, I started the same way. So I was on Odesk and Elance, right, which merged into
Yeah.
Upwork.
Yeah.
And I was living in the Philippines at the time, and I was messaging people
Nice.
and saying, basically, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I will communicate and over communicate, and I will figure out how to do it, and I will get it done. And that's kind of how I got my first gigs, more on the technical side. Do you think that grind, that hustle, that grittiness is essential for people who want to go down this services path, or is it just maybe you and I are a sample size of two, and it's just a bias, and there are multiple ways to kind of go down that journey?
I'm sure there's multiple ways to go down it, but I would recommend they listen to our experiences and others so that they could decide what path is right for them. So I always suggest people to try freelancing while they're at work or a little bit on the side just to see how they like it. It's a little different when you're getting money paid for producing something, usually creative, by a certain amount of date. And I think the hard part is the creative process can be so unknown to people that you're going to learn about sales, about marketing, and how to communicate your service and really the value that you're going to provide them. So it's part of like education and awareness. And I think what's nice about that is you realize like, what can I do? What can I do? What do I want to do? So I think at that point, you really got to dig in deep and decide what's my goal? Is it to make more money? Is it to have freedom? And what are those baby steps to go there?
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful framing. And one thing that even now I find very difficult to adopt is learning from other people's advice or mistakes. And you can hear something and you can know it to be true on one level, and then 4 years go by and the instance or the situation happens to you, and then you really get it and you really understand that. But I still think what you say deeply resonates, because if you can learn 5% from someone who's been on the path ahead of you, it just accelerates your learning so much more.
Yeah, and that's something that I've learned consulting is I love to network in person more than I like networking remotely. And it's possibly because I gravitate towards the person with the white hair or no hair in the room. And I look at them and say, that person's probably gone through a lot of experience. If they're at this meetup about other agencies, I bet their agency's 30 years old and I bet they've gone through multiple recessions and things like that. I want to talk to that person. They have a lot more life experience. I want to know, like, what happens with AI. You guys have gone through something maybe similar. I'm very curious about life experience as it kind of plays a role in business experience. So I usually gravitate to the older, experienced ones for sure.
I might have to steal that just because, given I
Yeah,
am of the no hair tribe, I can just
yeah, you're
say
part
I
of the club now.
sacrificed it to the gods. Exactly right. White hair and no hair. So I want to shift a little bit to Visual Boston itself. So you talked
Sure.
about your journey and kind of your experience, and then how that translated into obviously very much on the design side. But
Hmm.
Visual Boston also does the front end development side. So what's it
Yep.
like to bring those two worlds together? Why did you do it? And kind of what are your learnings in, was it a good decision, or should you just stay focused on design or just front end development? Talk a bit about that thought process.
Yeah, it's a good question. So my business partner, co-founder, Mark Stenquist, he's a front-end engineer. He was a designer. I was joke he went to the dark side to go coding. And I think he and I have always had a love for like really good quality design. And what I mean by that is user experience, colors, emotions that you get from it, interactions, and really good code. So is it clean, semantic, scalable? Can people read it? Is it best practice? So is it performing well? And since he's more on the front end, we kind of met at the top piece, like on the front side. Of course, I've worked with some really great full stack engineers. I worked with some great back end engineers and DevOps and product managers in my career. But he and I want to focus on that first. So we saw a lot of web app projects. We worked on web app projects that just sucked. And they were missing either that side on the design side or this side on the development side. And we're like, okay, there's still a need for good quality design. And the challenge that we felt as consultants or a siloed agency that just did design, that just did development, is you're kind of at the whim of the person or the stakeholder with the money. So are they going to bring in their partner? Are they qualified? Are they hoping to trust you with their partner? So we ended up doing just like design and then doing the front end of it. And of course, that kind of grows into, well, can you guys do the back end? Can you do the DevOps? I think right now where our comfort level really is a presentational. And I like that because our ICP, our perfect client, already has backend, already has DevOps, or we have some great partners, just like you guys, to be able to bring in the experts that we trust, that we work well with to kind of get the job done. And I think it's nice to stay in your lane, but know that you have the team chemistry there if you need it. And that was the most important thing to us. If we work with DevOps, if we work with backend, are they going to be in Figma, huddling with us in real time, talking about schema and, having a good time, but also trying to solve the problems? Or is it going to be crickets and we talk to an account manager and we'll never talk to them again? And I think that's where, we had to make sure that we focused on what we knew best.
Two questions here. So I'll start with the one, and we'll circle back to the other as long as I don't forget it. With designers and engineers, those two worlds can be at odds. I've seen teams where, if you've been on Dribble with 3Bs, it's a kind of designer portfolio site where people design amazingly beautiful things that then if you hand it off to an engineer, they say, how the hell am I supposed to build this? This is like, it's very cool, but it's going to take a lot of custom work if it's even doable. So how do you think about team construction in bridging those two gaps together? And maybe it's more of, what's your thesis and kind of thought process around that, but also say someone's listening and they have a team, they have a designer, maybe it's a fractional designer, outsourced designer, or have a front engineer, whether in-house or out of house, and there's a disconnect. What are the principles that you've kind of instilled or lead with to make sure that there is that connection? Yes, they both have their unique disciplines, but they need to be able to work together to achieve the coherent vision for the company.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think of the first word, empathy. So you're trying to have empathy for what is that person's responsibility and roles? What are they trying to accomplish? What is, their background experience and knowledge? And how do they like to communicate? And I think once you have some of those three in mind, you can create a safe culture environment where they feel safe to ask questions, talk to each other, and maybe teach each other. So, I'll give you a good example. I like these tools, these cloud based tools like Figma and Webflow, because they're starting to kind of blend the two. And I'm really just talking at first design and front end engineering. So, all of a sudden, my design team is saying, oh, I didn't know about tokens or variables. Tell me more about that. And it will actually get the engineer in their comfort zone to pull up CSS and kind of walk through the different classes, how they structure it and why. And I think what I notice is a lack of confidence in a lot of individuals in the tech industry, just in general. And I think when you get someone in their comfort level to share something that is what they do every day, and you're kind of excited by it, it builds up their confidence. They say like, yeah, I'm so glad I could teach you something. Me personally, I love to teach people and help them out. I never ask for anything in return. And I see that with engineers and designers. So an engineer, if they're like, I'm not a designer, well, I make sure they know that, well, you have some great ideas to the solution that we're trying to get towards. And there's multiple solutions there. If anything, you're the one building it at the end. So we really need your valuable insight. And I think that kind of bridge is what is this scary unknown to people. Partially because I think back in the day, we used to silo people physically in spaces. And as the company gets bigger, obviously you have a whole floor of designers, product designers, and a whole floor of engineers. And then it gets even bigger and goes like global, like physical headquarters in different countries. And I think this remote kind of era that we're in is starting to give us these tools that we can bridge collaboration, real time collaboration. And I would say just try to give the teams a safe space to ask questions, not feel stupid, and try to share some knowledge. And you'll probably start to see a little bit of that team chemistry and trust build up. In terms of hiring like a freelancer versus agency versus, in house, the challenge is, are you having the expertise and resources internally? And I always mention, yes, it's cheaper to probably hire internally, but we are also investing in the overhead costs of education, team chemistry, making sure that their creative and development skills are up to date. Our Slack channels, we ask any question, and it's probably a game to most of the team if they can answer it first. which is so cool to watch. And I think that's the kind of part that people forget when they think of hiring in-house. Freelancers are cheaper, but they may or may not have the soft skills to work with you as well. Keep in mind they might be a really good designer, but they also might not know how to properly estimate something. They might not know, what is your business objective? Is it conversion, retention, awareness, etc.? And what's going to be best value for you? So, they might be used to designing something beautiful for a month when you really just need someone to take a week, find the right solution to keep moving the needle. And that's the challenging part, unless you find an agency or a freelancer that can kind of combine the business side of things, or you're going to have to invest in training them or educating them if you really want the ultimate value out of a good product designer, for example.
I think there are some very cool threads to pull on there. One is that you mentioned how there's a lack of confidence in the tech space, and that can be design, front end, back end dev. And there's I think there's this stigma of technology is so cutting edge, it's so innovative. You're not working in necessarily old world, you're kind of working in an industry that didn't exist 30 years ago. But that lack of confidence is very, very prevalent, and I never really identified it as being a barrier for communication across teams, because someone's insecure on the design side, someone's insecure on the front end side, someone's insecure on the product side. And so no one quite wants to speak up. And so creating that space and that community and that openness and the Slack channels where everyone's kind of racing to answer the questions, and it's just kind of, we're all learning together, breaks down those barriers in a very meaningful way, I think, that likely gets you better results. And I think it's cool that you have identified that, you pull on that thread, you put it out there, and then you lead with intention to make sure that you're bridging those gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's cool to see, and I'm sure it shows up in your work.
Yeah, it's fun to watch the team have that chemistry for sure.
I want to jump back to just overall kind of the approach to the team construction and how you work with your clients themselves. So in the services world, there's always a gap in terms of where the client's knowledge is about your industry. That's why they're hiring you, right? They have some goal from a business perspective, and then you have an expertise, so you're being brought in. How do you leverage communication to bridge that gap? Because I think the part that you were touching on, even internal to teams, but also from the client to vendor connection, is how well can you communicate? Yes, you need to create beautiful designs, you need to do them on time, you need to do them on budget. There are all these aspects that we know and we talk about, but it's communication that I think is one of the most fundamental aspects of what's in the client's mind, how is that communicated, how is that interpreted by the vendor and the team, and then what is actually manifests from that communication back to the client while also giving updates. So maybe just share a few thoughts on how do you bridge that gap of communication, knowing that you're coming from different places. If you have 15 years of experience and they don't have that experience of design and front end development.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think one of the challenges is to figure out, how do I know what problem my client is really trying to solve, short term versus long term. And you have to remember that there's actual politics getting involved in their day to day. Are they doing this to make their boss happy? Are they doing this to raise another fund round? What is the real why behind what they're doing? And I think that helps then educate yourself on how you want to approach that communication. So a good example is even freelancing. I remember with my No Monkey Business brand, I would be confident enough, and I still am today with clients at the agency, to say, tell me about your goals, business objectives, where you're at, what you've been through. And I'd say a lot of people are having a struggle with our industry on the estimates, because you're getting someone that's very new and maybe be very affordable. And then you've got someone who has a lot of overhead or a big brand, and they're trying to be very, lucrative, of course, rightfully so, trying to make profits. So for the client, this is already a very scary, unknown territory to come in. And there's a lot of jargon in our industry, a lot of, terms that sound really scary that aren't. So I think the first thing I do is try to make sure that they're comfortable. Try to bring your technology terms down. Use analogies if you need to. I like a house analogy, typically, to kind of explain, Well, if you put a light switch on here and it turns the light above me, that's good. That's good user experience. And then if all of a sudden you walk into a kitchen, you get lost, and you have the garage attached to the bathroom, that's not good user experience. And I kind of use analogies that they're comfortable with to help explain things if they need it. The other thing that I'll do is just advocate for best practice. So I'll try to walk them through, well, maybe you shouldn't start with a native iOS app, and let me explain the benefits and, pros and cons behind that. And most of the time when you walk them through, I found on a whiteboard or in my program Figma, I think it kind of gives them a little reassurance that, okay, this young kid knows what he's talking about. He seems to know his program pretty fast. And I think I try to build trust with them as fast as I possibly can. That's my goal. Build trust with the client. So then that way they know that my interest is really out for their interest. So I want to make sure that they're around. I want to see them, IPO or be on their yacht. And I always joke with a lot of my clients and friends, like, well, just invite me on the yacht, and I really mean that because I think they're the ones that are up at 2 a.m. taking funding from a VC firm, stressed as shit, trying to deal with growth. All I did was use my expertise to help kind of guide them. They really do deserve the champagne at the end. And I just want to be, on the yacht, have a little fun. So I would say, like, understand people, how they like to communicate, because everyone communicates differently, and know the tools that you have. Are they more visual? Are they audible? Are they like video? And use that to your advantage to better communicate to them. Some people like numbers, some people like visuals. And I think I like to cater that conversation depending who I talk to for sure. So I would definitely say know your audience. I know everyone says that, but it really is true. And just try to build trust as fast as you possibly can. And the rest of it's going to be a lot easier for you.
Where does trust show up with working with users and taking user feedback to translate it into iterations on the product?
Yeah, I wish everybody did user testing and understood that it's not scary. It's like talking to someone at a bus stop and just saying hi, thank you, or good morning. And I think it's this idea that you have to invest a ton to get a lot of value out of that process. So for me, when I even just do user testing with the team on a idea or concept, it could take less than a week. And the value that you get from it is not just creating a better user experience, you're co-creating with the end user. And I've found some of those people are most likely customers as well, or it's a great connection to then open up more discussion with that end user. So I would say building trust is getting them part of the co-creation, then following up with them. And I've been dying to see someone scale away for companies of all sizes to build their own private network of users, even gamify it or something, so that they can leverage this advocacy pool of customers or end users to give constant feedback. That's also why I'm really excited about AI and I embrace it, because I think you can do these like micro learnings that build trust with end users and apply it to your product design. You don't need to wait 2 to 4 weeks to implement something if you just validated it in a couple of days with an end user. It sucks or it's great. Just build it and just ship it. You don't need to kind of do this huge blast in a month or so. And I think
So
people are a little nervous to talk to people and get feedback. Sorry, go ahead.
there's definitely that nervousness of talking to people, whether it's in the sales side of potential new customers or even existing customers. You don't want to, oh, they're happy. Let me just back off them. But I want to actually dig into, you mentioned with the advent of AI, the ability to kind of do micro or faster iterations and prototyping. What do you mean by that? How are you doing that currently within your business?
So I've tried a lot of stuff on my own, kind of treated like R&D for the agency. And I think people are so close, but it's not quite there yet. But it's probably coming this year or next year or anytime soon there. And I think what it means, it's empowering people to have their ideas have equal weight in the process. And what I mean by that is instead of just relying on one product designer or one lead to come with an idea, you could kind of take user centric feedback, whether it's your end users, analytics, or anything like that, feed it into some kind of engine to either help guide the designers and engineers or spit up actual prototypes that are coded. I'm not saying this is production code, but you can use that to have like databases, tables, like real actual data, real interaction on devices that you could then either have live somewhere in like a staging environment, have end users play with it, and then decide what you want to really bring into the production environment. And I think that was not possible probably like 2 years ago, at least on the mainstream side. So a lot of people are trying to do their own AI like MVP for non-technical, but I think you're still going to need that designer or that engineer who understands the nuances of a scalable product, but they're the ones that should be empowering through this AI tool to give that MVP, a 2 to 4 week kind of design sprint, not a 3 month sprint. I think what's cool about that is product market fit is a huge issue still. And it kind of makes me super sad to hear all the stories of startups just not talking to end users, building around features, getting too excited to just create something when you really just need to sit back, listen, follow the data, follow the money, and kind of make micro tweaks here and there, and you'll be okay. Like you'll be great. And it is a living, breathing thing. So the AI can kind of take those ideas in a de-risked environment. You could have like 10 different product market fit ideas with different revenue models and things like that, and let it run for a month. And I think that'll help us de-risk product market fit, for example, rather than spending 500,000 to a million, whatever you want to call it, seed, and then missing it completely and then being like, oh, we're not actually D2C, we're B2B now. I'm like, oh my God, like that is an expensive shift right there. Like, why are we pivoting still in 2024? I don't think it needs to be this way or as hard of a blow.
It's a very interesting approach of saying AI is going to help compress that so you get to that product market fit way faster than traditionally, where you have to spend that entire pre friends and family, pre-seed, maybe seed, right, to maybe even seed extension to get to the point where you actually have that true product market fit, assuming you stay alive through all of that and don't fail in some other way, whether it's a founder breakup or you can't close the round or some other economic change, a large corporation releases a feature that makes you obsolete.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna, I think AI is gonna put a lot of pressure on getting more ideas out there, but I'm hoping the ideas that actually do go to market are gonna be more de-risked and you'll have more confidence in that decision. And my guess is investors would feel obviously way more comfortable if you had some, even revenue, small revenue from those kind of smoke tests to say, okay, that's the right one to put some gasoline on. Whereas now I just feel like everybody's waiting for the plateaus and then you go up to the next plateau. And when I talk to founders, they're so stressed out. They're like, this is way more stressful than I thought. This past couple of years, everyone's kind of like not sure what to do, lay off the team, don't lay off the team. And I think at the end of the day, there's a lot on product design, like our team and your team can help them with to help guide them a little bit. And a little related to that, I think people forget that product design is not just the digital experience. Product design needs to get sales, marketing, business all involved in the same conversation and objective. And I think that kind of goes back to the original question on like the freelancer versus agency. Like you need to make sure you have the A team that are willing to work together at the same objective. They can be doing different things, but they have to know like, hey, I'm about to release a feature. Is marketing kind of bringing any traffic to this or any awareness? Or what are we going to do with this rich data that we get from this feature? Are we going to bring that back into some kind of pool and get as much feedback from there that could help us know how's it going? What should we improve next? And again, I think AI is going to touch all of that, or I'm hoping it's going to touch all of that, where we as humans get to then be even more creative and we can talk to other humans about our real emotional problems and deliver some really cool things. So I'm personally excited. And if it gets scary, then I'll just have to learn gardening from Mark and then we'll be fine.
I was going to say, do you think there are losers and winners in this AI evolution. Especially, we've seen AI kind of come after creative and service-based work first with artists and photographers and copywriters, and code is a little bit slower, but it's something like 50% of the code on GitHub is written by AI in the past 18 months or something, right? So it's definitely going to get to the point where code and probably design kind of get swept up in that. You're a
Yeah.
service business owner. But you sound very optimistic about this unknown future.
I feel like we're in a gold rush right now. We don't know what it is. So in my mind, I would rather embrace it and not charge a client for doing something mundane. I would rather get them to a Series B faster with the learnings I get from AI, and have my design team not sit there and make a button in Figma. I'd rather them be painting it in the sky of like what happens if I helped, did interaction design in the air. I mean, I think there's senses like, touch, smell, things that we're not even exploring yet as experienced designers. We're stuck on these screens. And I like movies like Minority Report and stuff. And I think it's coming. Like we're there. It's coming. And I'm very excited for all the boring, mundane industries that can now finally, have center stage. Agriculture, like you name it. There's a lot of boring industries that I think can finally utilize tech, and it doesn't have to be scary or expensive to get a lot of value. And I think creatives are just going to use these tools. I do think we'll probably be much more stressed out because things are going to be moving a lot faster. So that's kind of what makes me nervous. Like even I ask people with kids older than mine, I'm like, what's social media like? What's the devices like? It sounds like it sucks. And I'm like, myself right now, like I'd rather be flying to you having an old fashioned right now, but here we are. I'm in New Hampshire in a, finished basement, and that's cool. But it's also like I miss human connection. So I'm hoping with the AI stuff, we also remember that there are some negatives that are going to come with this that we have to address for sure. And to your point,
Well,
winners or losers, yeah. I mean, I think you have to make a decision. Is the industry that you're in at stake of having AI come in, and what does that mean for you? Are you going to stay in there and learn what it is and test it out and kind of go scuba diving in the unknown, or is it not for you and you need to go find something else that like I would assume like a therapist, masseuse, like anything like that. Trades, I'm hoping are coming
yeah,
back. If
yeah,
my kids want to
yeah,
be trades, I'd be like, go for it. I need a good
yeah.
plumber and electrician. I think we're always going to kind of need that for a while. Things that you wouldn't trust a robot to do, honestly. I think it was China I was noticing was starting to like light stuff on fire. And I think at the end of the day, humans are scared of this stuff for sure. I personally am freaked out by robots. They always have freaked me out. I love them. They're super cool in the movies, but when we're elderly, do I want a robot really putting me to bed? Not really. We've all seen iRobot.
We know where that's coming in, and that's kind of the dual-sided nature of technology. Whether it's 1,000 years ago, I guess 500 years ago with the printing press. I mean, it also caused a lot of chaos and tension and turmoil, and also changed how humans became literate. So there's always two sides generally to the relentless march of progress and technology. But I for one am also more on the optimistic side. I don't quite necessarily know what that future is going to look like, but I am excited for it and along for the ride.
Yeah. I mean, what else can you do, honestly?
Can't stop it. Can't put the genie back in the bottle.
No, no. Might as well have some fun with it.
Exactly. Alec, this has been phenomenal to have you on the show. Before we go, do you mind just sharing where people can connect with you online if they're interested in Visual Boston or chatting with you or learning more about skiing slope recommendations?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. They could go to visualboston.com, or you can find me at Alec Harrison at LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect and continue some conversations. I really love learning and sharing, so please don't be shy.
This was fantastic. Thanks again, Alec.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.